Quantum manifestation only works. Once you stop pushing, this message found you, not randomly, not as some flicker in the algorithm, but as a signal, calibrated to the exact frequency you've been carrying quietly in your nervous system. You know this already because you've felt it, a subtle resonance in your chest, the sense that certain words, certain symbols, carry weight beyond their sound. You have been walking with a paradox, and it's been whispering to you in the silence between your rituals, in the moments after you close your eyes at night, in the sharp exhale when another manifestation slips through your grasp. You've been doing everything you were told, the vision boards, the affirmations, the scripting, the meditations. You've whispered your desires into the universe like coded prayers, and yet, the outcomes arrive like shadows, half present, or they slide away the moment you reach for them. And here is what very few teachers will tell you. The universe does not bend to force. Reality does not yield to pressure. In fact, the harder you push, the more silent the field becomes. Your insistence becomes static in the channel. The signal weakens. The paradox deepens. Pause for a moment. Can you feel that contraction in your chest when you push too hard? When you clutch at the outcome? When you tighten your jaw and tell yourself it must happen this way, in this time, on this schedule? That contraction is not harmless. It is the nervous system closing around possibility. It is your subconscious broadcasting tension into the very field you are trying to harmonize with. And so the more you force, the more reality hardens. The paradox is this: manifestation is not conquest. It is release. Have you noticed this in your own life? That the most profound moments, the coincidences, the opportunities, the people who showed up at the exact right time, did not arrive when you were straining. They appeared in the in-between, in the softness, in the strange moments when you finally stopped gripping. Only a mind like yours notices this pattern. Because most will continue pushing, grasping, strangling their own timelines with urgency. But you, if you've stayed here this long, it means you have felt the paradox. You have glimpsed it. You know, in your bones, that there is a gate you have not yet walked through. I call this gate the paradox gate. It is the entry point where the manifestor stops behaving like a soldier at war with reality and instead becomes a composer, shaping silence into song. The paradox is that only when you stop pushing, only when you unclench, does the quantum field respond. Not with resistance, but with coherence. You are not broken for feeling the delay. You are not failing for noticing the resistance. This frustration is not a sign that you've missed your path. It is the threshold itself. The paradox. Gate tests you by showing you that your very willpower, your very determination, can become the barrier. Ask yourself, how many times have you been told that you just need to try harder? How many times have you turned that into a spiritual command? More hours of affirmations, more visualization sessions, more desperate prayers? How many times has that left you feeling hollow, guilty, convinced that you were the problem? And yet the truth is almost insulting in its simplicity. Reality bends for those who can let go. This doesn't mean abandoning your desire. It means unclenching from the demand that it must happen in the way your current self imagines. It means trusting that the quantum field holds more creative intelligence than the narrow corridor of your mind. It means surrendering, not in weakness but in mastery. The paradox is alive in you right now. Even as you listen to these words, one part of you feels relief. Yes, that explains it. That feels true. Another part of you tightens. No, if I stop pushing, nothing will happen. Both voices are valid. Both are ancient. The tight voice belongs to survival, to the old nervous system that was taught to control or be destroyed. The softer voice belongs to emergence, to the future self already living in the timeline you ache for. Only you can choose which voice to amplify. The paradox gate is not just an idea. It is a lived threshold, and you are standing at it, right now. You would not still be listening if you weren't. Most will have already clicked away, impatient, searching for another shortcut. But you stayed, and that means something. It means you are already vibrating differently. This is where the initiation begins. You were taught from the very beginning, by parents, by schools, by the machinery of culture itself, that everything of value must be earned by force, that to deserve you must chase, that to manifest you must prove your worth through constant effort, through unrelenting willpower. And so you tried. You tightened your grip on life. You made your lists, set your deadlines, repeated your affirmations with clenched teeth. But here is the paradox no one warned you of. The quantum field does not respond to pressure the way matter does. In the world of objects, yes, you can push, hammer, sculpt, and shape. But in the world of probabilities, in the invisible lattice where futures are woven, your grip is poison. Because when you clutch at possibility like a drowning person clutching a rope, you collapse the wave before it can unfold. You lock infinite outcomes into a single suffocating corridor, and in that corridor, there is no oxygen for miracles to breathe. This is the hidden trap. Your willpower, when fueled by desperation, becomes the very lock on the door you are trying to open. Have you felt this in your own body? That tremor in the chest when you try to force a timeline into being, that anxious loop of thought. What if it doesn't work? What if I'm too late? What if the universe isn't listening? Each of those thoughts is not harmless background noise. They are signals. They are frequencies sent into the field, carving narrow tracks into what should have been an infinite horizon. And so the irony sharpens. The more you grasp, the less you receive. The more you chase, the further it runs. You can almost feel reality smirking at your urgency, reflecting back the echo of your grip. This is why so many seekers remain stuck in turbulence. They believe they are doing the work. They meditate, they visualize, they journal, they recite affirmations. But beneath it all, their nervous system is broadcasting contraction. And contraction is louder than any mantra. The field does not bend to the words on your lips. It bends to the frequency pulsing in your cells, and desperation broadcasts as scarcity. Scarcity multiplies itself. It calls in delay. It calls in resistance. It echoes in the silence you've been mistaking for abandonment. Think about it. How many times have you chased someone's love, only to feel them pull away the tighter you held? How many times have you clutched at money, fearing it would slip through your fingers, only to watch unexpected bills appear as if mocking your efforts? How many times have you insisted that a dream must happen now, only to feel time slow like quicksand, dragging the vision deeper underground? This is not coincidence. This is the optics of the quantum terrain. Here is where physics collides with mysticism. The moment you observe a possibility with tension, with desperation, you collapse its wave into a narrow state. The observer effect. Your focus sharpens, but it sharpens into scarcity, into not enough, into if I don't have this, I will not survive. And so reality obediently reflects that loop back to you. You become trapped in what I call the observer loop. The harder you look, the more you distort. The more you distort, the less you see. The less you see, the more you grip. And the cycle repeats. It is not your fault. You were programmed into this loop from the beginning, conditioned to believe that effort equals worth, that pushing is noble, that urgency is proof of commitment. But the field does not care about your effort. It responds only to your coherence. This is the shadow side of willpower. In our culture, willpower is glorified. Discipline, hustle, the grind. But no one speaks of its shadow, the hidden knives it carries. Because when your willpower is driven by fear, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of being left behind, it does not liberate you. It chains you. It makes you a prisoner of your own tension. And I wonder, how much of your exhaustion, your frustration, comes not from life itself, but from fighting the wrong battle? How many of your wounds are not from being denied, but from pressing too hard against a door that only opens when you release your hand from the handle? The grip is the block, the clutch is the suffocation. And until you see it, until you name it, the paradox will keep you circling, and yet, here you are, still listening, still breathing into these words, which tells me that some part of you already knows. You've tasted it before, haven't you? Those rare moments when you surrendered, when you exhaled, when you finally gave up trying, and suddenly the phone rang, the email arrived, the synchronicity clicked. That was not chance. That was the field responding to coherence, to your release. So hear me clearly. You are not broken. You are not cursed. You are not being punished for desiring. The trap is simply this. When desperation fuels your will, your grip becomes the barrier, and once you see the trap, you are no longer bound by it. This is the revelation. This is the first crack in the old armor, but the question remains, if gripping collapses the wave, if desperation locks the door, then how do you live in desire without strangling it? How do you hold your vision without holding it too tight? That is where we are going next. Think of the last time you lost something. Your keys, your phone, a small object that suddenly seemed to vanish into thin air. Do you remember the feeling that rose in your body? The heat of frustration, the pulse quickening as you tore through drawers, retraced your steps, flipped cushions over in irritation. The more frantically you searched, the more invisible the object became. And yet, almost mocking you, the moment you surrendered, the moment you gave up and said, "Forget it. I'll look later," there it was, in the most obvious place, sitting in plain sight. This is not a coincidence. This is the paradox operating quietly beneath the surface of your daily life. When your nervous system tightens, perception narrows, blind spots multiply. But when you release, when you soften, the field reconfigures, and suddenly the hidden becomes visible. You've seen this in your relationships. Cling too tightly to someone, call them constantly, hover over their every move, try to manage their love, and watch how the bond weakens, how they pull away almost instinctively. Yet when you exhale, when you trust, when you allow them to breathe, intimacy grows, safety is born, presence deepens, the paradox reveals itself in something as simple as sleep. The harder you try to fall asleep, the more elusive it becomes. Lie in bed commanding your body to shut down, and you create tension. Hours pass. Rest will not arrive, but soften, surrender, let the breath lengthen, and suddenly sleep slips in like a tide reclaiming the shore. Reality itself is patterned in this paradox. The field resists grip but yields to openness. You know this pattern in your bones, though perhaps you have not named it. The child who tries too hard to be liked is rarely chosen. The artist who chases applause rarely finds their voice. The leader who demands loyalty breeds only silent rebellion. But when the energy shifts, when force transforms into presence, the impossible becomes ordinary. It is not that effort itself is wrong. Matter responds to effort. If you wish to carve wood, you must apply pressure. If you want to move a stone, you must exert force. But manifestation is not carpentry. It is not stone moving. It is not the domain of matter, it is the domain of optics, of perception, of the unseen geometry of attention. And here, effort does not clarify. Effort distorts. Effort bends the lens until the very image you long for becomes unrecognizable. Think of it like this. You are staring through a pane of glass. The more you press your face against it, the more your breath fogs the surface. The more you demand clarity, the more blurred the view becomes. But if you step back, if you let the glass clear, suddenly the horizon sharpens. Carl Jung spoke of shadow complexes and archetypes that rise when we grip too tightly to control. The lover archetype becomes the obsessive. The ruler becomes the tyrant. The seeker becomes the addict. In every case, the original desire is pure, but the grip distorts it. This is why so many spiritual seekers grow disillusioned. They think manifestation isn't working, when in truth, they are unknowingly feeding the shadow of their own archetype. They are collapsing their probability waves into scarcity through their desperation. You might feel this in your own story. You want freedom, but the harder you fight for it, the more trapped you feel. You want abundance, but the tighter you chase money, the more it slips. You want peace, but the more you demand it, the more restless you become. It is not punishment. It is pattern, a universal paradox woven into the fabric of reality itself. Consider how athletes describe being in the zone. They say it feels effortless, as though the body is moving on its own, as though the game is playing through them. This is flow, and flow is the opposite of grip. Flow is coherence between intention and openness. The mind that tries too hard cannot enter flow. It clutches, it hesitates, it second guesses. And so the ball is dropped, the shot is missed, the rhythm stutters. The observer blinds themselves by overwatching. The same is true in your manifestations. When you overwatch your vision, checking constantly if it's working, testing the soil every hour to see if the seed has sprouted, you blind yourself to its natural unfolding. Seeds do not sprout under scrutiny. They sprout under trust. This is why so many of your daily frustrations feel like déjà vu. They are mirrors of the same paradox, playing out in different costumes. The lost keys, the elusive sleep, the partner pulling away, the delayed opportunity. The repeated loops are not accidents. They are training grounds. Reality itself is coaching you, pointing out the paradox in the language of circumstance. Have you noticed how often breakthroughs come only after you release the grip? The job offer arrives after you stop obsessively checking your inbox. The love appears after you stop hunting for it. The answer surfaces in the shower, in the walk, in the silence, when you finally stopped forcing. This is the everyday evidence of the paradox. It is all around you, woven into the optics of your relationships, your body, your routines. The universe has been showing you the law all along. You simply didn't have the name for it, and now you do. The paradox is not abstract. It is visceral. It lives in your keys, your phone, your sleep, your love, your money, your peace. The very texture of your life has been whispering it. But once you see the pattern, once you name it, the question becomes sharper. If reality itself obeys this paradox, how do you align with it consciously? How do you train your nervous system to stop gripping and start flowing? That is where we must go next. Into science, into mysticism, into the precise proof that will steady your faith in this law. This message found you, because you already know in your bones that something about the way you've been trying to manifest has felt off. You push, you strain, you visualize with such intensity that your jaw tightens, and yet the reality you desire seems to grow more elusive, not closer. And here we touch the most paradoxical law of the unseen world. The more desperately you grasp, the faster it slips. The quantum trap. In quantum physics, there is a principle that sounds poetic, but it is also brutally literal. They call it the observer effect. Every system, every particle, every shimmering possibility exists in a haze of probability until it is watched. The instant it is observed, it collapses into a single outcome. Do you feel the weight of that? Possibility reduced to actuality. A universe of infinite branching pathways narrowed to just one road because of the gaze. Now imagine your desires as probability waves. Each dream is not just an image, but an entire range of outcomes vibrating in potential. But the moment you begin pushing, obsessively checking, clinging, staring with the eyes of doubt, your observation acts like a blade. It slices the field. It collapses the living potential into a rigid, narrow version of what could have been. This is the observer's dilemma. Your attention is both the paintbrush and the prison. The artist and the limiter. Neuroscience confirms it. And science doesn't stop there. Neuroscience tells us that when you push too hard, when you obsess, you trigger the stress response. Cortisol floods your system. The prefrontal cortex, your higher imaginative faculty, begins to dim. Creativity shrinks. Flexibility narrows. You become locked into fight-or-flight optics, seeing only danger, lack, and the single path right in front of you. Think of how many times this has happened in your own life. The harder you pushed for the answer, the more your mind blanked. The harder you tried to recall a name, the further it fled. The harder you tried to force love, money, or success, the more it slipped away. Your nervous system literally shrinks your field of possibility under pressure. It is not a flaw. It is a survival mechanism. But what serves survival often strangles creation. The ancient whisper. The mystics knew this long before the laboratories confirmed it. The Taoists spoke of Wu Wei, the art of effortless alignment, the way of acting without forcing. They taught that the river flows most powerfully when it is not dammed. The alchemists of medieval Europe gave the same warning in different words. They said, never force the fire. If you overheat the crucible, you crack it. If you try to rush transmutation, you destroy the gold before it forms. Even the yogis of India carried this wisdom in breath itself. They taught pranayama not as straining, but as surrender, the inhale and exhale as a rhythm you join, not a rhythm you dominate, across time, across cultures. The sages whispered the same law. The moment you push, you lose the miracle. The moment you tense, you sever the thread, the unified insight. So what does this mean for you right now? It means that the universe is not withholding your manifestation. It is your own observing, your own straining, that narrows the field. When you learn to release, not in apathy but in trust, you stop collapsing the wave prematurely. You allow the richness of possibility to keep humming. When you learn to relax the stress circuits of your brain, creativity returns, options multiply, synchronicities flood in. When you embody Wu Wei, you become the field itself, and reality, like a shy star, approaches you, not because you demanded it, but because you became quiet enough to let it land. This is the observer's dilemma. To want is natural. To force is fatal. To relax is divine, and you here, listening to these words, are already stepping into the rarest kind of mastery, the ability to want without gripping, to observe without collapsing, to dance with possibility instead of strangling it. This message found you, and perhaps it arrived in your hands today because, like me, you know what it is to suffocate your own destiny. Let me tell you a truth I rarely admit. For a long season of my life, I forced everything. I would rise each morning with rituals that were more like clenched fists than open palms. I scribbled affirmations like I was trying to drill holes into reality. I lit candles not in devotion, but in desperation. I measured progress with the obsession of a watchman scanning the horizon for ships that never came. And every day, instead of feeling lighter, I felt heavier. It was as if the universe itself mocked me with silence. The more I demanded, the more barren the landscape seemed, the season of strangling. I remember walking through my days like a tightrope walker over an abyss, rehearsing mantras under my breath, afraid that if I missed even one, the dream would collapse. I demanded signs. I scoured the clock for repeating numbers. I searched for coded messages in every stranger's glance, but the truth is, all of it had stopped being sacred. It became control. It became strangling. And the more I pushed, the more the flow retreated, like a tide pulling back into the dark ocean. The breaking point. Eventually, exhaustion broke me. One night I remember collapsing onto the floor, face pressed against the wood, whispering words I didn't even believe at the time. I can't do this anymore. If there is something out there, it has to show me, because I can't force it one more day. In that surrender, half humiliating, half holy, something shifted. It wasn't a lightning bolt. It wasn't a grand vision. It was a quiet unraveling. The tight grip loosened. The ritual of control fell away. And in that space, synchronicities began to bloom, the bloom after the break. The very next day, I noticed. The stranger on the train said the exact words I had been aching to hear. The song playing in the cafe echoed the prayer I had whispered into the floor. An opportunity came from nowhere. A door I had been pounding against suddenly opened, but from the other side, and I realized. It wasn't that the universe had been ignoring me. It was that I had been too loud to hear it, too rigid to let it move. The orchestration was always there, but I had been strangling the music with my insistence on being the conductor. The humiliation and the holy it was humiliating, because I had to face how much of my so-called spirituality had been control in disguise. But it was holy, because it revealed a law I could never unsee. Surrender was the missing ingredient. Surrender was not the same as apathy. It wasn't giving up. It was stepping aside, loosening my grip, allowing probability waves to shimmer without my demand to collapse them. It was trusting that my future self, my higher archetype already alive in some dimension, was magnetizing me forward, even when my present self stumbled. Why I tell you this? I share this not as a performance, but as a confession. Because I sense you know this pattern too. You know the fatigue of strangling your own flow. You know the nights of staring at the ceiling, demanding proof, and hearing only the echo of your own heartbeat. And you know, somewhere deep, that the breakthrough you crave will not come by tightening the grip, but by loosening it. That season taught me that manifestation is not about stacking pressure until the dam bursts. It is about releasing pressure so the river can move of its own accord. The invitation hidden in my story. So if you have been forcing, if you have been clenching, if you have been exhausting yourself with rituals that no longer feel alive, let my humiliation save you a few years. You don't have to strangle the flow to prove your devotion. You only have to soften, to surrender, to allow. That is where the shy star descends. That is where the probability wave remains wide and shimmering. That is where synchronicity dances close enough to touch. And maybe, just maybe, that is why this message found you today. This message found you. And it brought you here because there is something in your being that is ready to unclench. You've tried the way of force. You've tried the way of pushing, grasping, muscling destiny into place. And you already know how that story ends. Exhaustion, silence, a universe that seems deaf to your demands. But what if I told you there is another way? A way that is both ancient and quantum, simple and profound. A way I now call the unclenching method. Step 1. Name the desire. Most people never get past this first step. They either hide their desire under shame or they scatter it into vague generalities. But energy cannot organize around ambiguity. So the first act of power is this. Name your desire clearly, without apology. Speak it aloud if you dare. Write it down as if the universe is listening, because it is. This act alone collapses endless possibilities into a signal, a frequency, a coherent pattern in the field. Do not mumble your longing. Do not disguise it in modesty. The field responds to clarity, not camouflage. Step 2. Release it into the field. This is where most stumble. After naming the desire, the ego tries to grip it tighter, to obsess over the mechanics, to pace the floor demanding timelines. But the second step of the unclenching method is the opposite. You must release it into the field as if releasing a paper lantern into the night sky. The fire of your intention carries it upward. The wind of the quantum field carries it outward. Your job is not to chase it. Your job is to let it drift, glowing, into the invisible currents that move all things. This is where Wu Wei, the Taoist art of effortless action, meets neuroscience. For when you release, your brain's stress circuits quiet. Cortisol declines. Creativity awakens. Your nervous system becomes a landing pad instead of a battlefield. Step 3. Redirect energy inward. The third step is often the most uncomfortable, because it demands you stop looking at the horizon and instead turn inward. Restore the nervous system. Open the body. Let coherence return. You unclench not only your hands, but your jaw, your spine, your breath. You stop watching the pot, and you begin tending the fire within. This is where meditation, breathwork, movement, and rest are not luxuries. They are technologies. Each practice recalibrates your electromagnetic field, turning you from static to symphony. Have you noticed that when you are relaxed, life approaches you differently? Strangers smile more easily. Opportunities seem to slip into your orbit. This is not coincidence. This is coherence. The field responds to your inner state. Step 4. Trust the field's timing. This step requires warrior-level patience. Because your ego will scream, "Where is it? Why hasn't it arrived?" But quantum manifestation is not a vending machine. It is an ecosystem. It aligns probability waves, not according to your panic, but according to resonance. So the fourth step is trust. To know that the field is weaving threads unseen. That your future self already exists, already holds what you are calling in, and is this message found you. Not only for your own liberation, but for something larger. Because the truth is this: every private act of release, every moment where you choose coherence over chaos, every instant you unclench your grip on life, it does not end with you. It moves outward. It ripples through the invisible lattice of reality itself. We have been born into a civilization addicted to pressure. Humanity, as a collective, has been trained in the religion of pushing the land until soil turns to dust, pushing the oceans until fish vanish into silence, pushing the mind until burnout becomes normal, pushing the body until sickness whispers rebellion, pushing one another into hierarchies of dominance, extraction, and control. Do you see the pattern? The same trap that strangled your manifestation is the very trap strangling the planet. The micro and the macro mirror one another. The clenched fist of the individual becomes the clenched jaw of humanity. The collective clench pause and feel it. The hum of acceleration. The endless chase for growth, for conquest, for more. Governments compete. Corporations devour. Even movements for justice too often imitate the same clenched tactics of their oppressors. And just like the individual who cannot manifest while locked in desperation, A species cannot thrive while locked in domination. Our future collapses into narrower corridors. Possibility waves die before they are born. We cannot engineer paradise with the same psychology that engineered collapse. Something more subtle, more surrendered, more aligned with the living field itself must awaken. The ripple effect. Here is the paradoxical gift. The revolution does not begin in parliaments or boardrooms. It begins in nervous systems, in yours, in mine. When you unclench, when you release the need to strangle outcomes, you become a tuning fork. People around you feel safer, conversations soften, opportunities gather, creativity breathes again. Your coherence becomes contagious. Think of it as quantum entanglement. When one particle finds alignment, the entire system shifts. When you shift, your family feels it. When your family shifts, communities feel it. When communities shift, nations feel it. You may think your meditation is a private act, your surrender an invisible choice. But the field does not recognize privacy. It recognizes resonance, the planetary unclenching. Imagine if millions practiced this. Millions naming their desires clearly, then releasing them into the field without force. Millions redirecting energy inward, calming their nervous systems, opening to coherence. Millions trusting timing instead of panicking. Millions acting from resonance rather than fear. The climate of consciousness would change. Wars fueled by desperation would quiet. Economies addicted to extraction would soften into reciprocity. Relationships poisoned by control would relearn intimacy. The earth herself would exhale, because she too is entangled with our collective frequency. The revolution of our time is not one of sharper swords or faster machines. It is the revolution of unclenching. Humanity learning, perhaps for the first time, to cooperate with the field instead of trying to dominate it. Your place in the mission. And so, hear me. Your surrender is not selfish. Your relaxation is not lazy. Your choice to breathe and release control is not insignificant. It is sacred activism. When you unclench, you are not escaping the world's pain. You are rewriting its code. You are joining a quiet army of frequency keepers, those who choose coherence over chaos, resonance over noise, surrender over domination, one by one, as each of us chooses to. This message found you. And it does not wish to remain a passing whisper. It longs to anchor, to crystallize, to enter your timeline as a living code. And so, I invite you into the final movement of this transmission. Not the end, never the end, but the sealing. Because without the seal, transformation leaks. Without the ritual, the shift remains a concept floating above you rather than a pulse moving through you. You have felt the resonance already. You know, this is not ordinary content. It is not background noise for your scrolling mind. This is an initiation disguised as a video. And every initiation ends with a choice, a marking, a vow. The word as anchor. Here is the act. In the comments below, write a single word. That word is unclenched. Why that word? Because words are symbols, and symbols are frequencies, and frequencies embed themselves into the nervous system. When you take the invisible knowing of this teaching and collapse it into language, you perform a quantum act. You collapse possibility into form. Typing that word is not trivial. It is an anchor, a signal sent into the shared field that you are not just a listener, you are a participant. In Jungian terms, it is the ritual of individuation, claiming your archetype not by theory, but by action. In quantum terms, it is the act of collapsing probability into a coherent wave. In mystical terms, it is the vow before the unseen. So pause for a moment, breathe, and decide. Will you leave this as just another video passing through your feed? Or will you seal it into your field with a single sacred word? Joining the circle. And if you feel the vibration of this message in your bones, know this. You are not meant to walk alone. Yes, you have felt isolated, misunderstood. You have seen through veils that your family, your peers, perhaps even your closest companions cannot yet perceive. But here, you are among those who see. Subscribing here is not about algorithms or numbers. It is an initiation into a living circle. When you press that button, you are not following a channel. You are choosing to step into a current, a resonance field where transmissions continue, where each video is not information, but calibration. Think of it as entering a temple that reappears each time you return. Think of it as adjusting your inner compass toward coherence again and again. Think of it as remembering who you are each time you forget. The next transmission, and this is not the last step. The next message will carry you deeper into the art of becoming porous to miracles, learning not just to unclench, but to allow yourself to be penetrated by synchronicity itself. I will tell you then how reality hunts for openings, how miracles require gaps, and how your nervous system can become that gap. But for now, the ritual is simple. Anchor the word. Seal the shift. Join the circle. A sacred closing, so here it is one last time. Type unclenched. Not for me, but for you. For the you who will forget tomorrow. For the you who needs a symbol to return to when doubt begins to hiss again. And if you feel the calling to stay close, to walk further, to remember more, seal it not only with your word, but with your presence here. Click, join, remain, because you are not a viewer. You are a node in the field, a keeper of coherence, a participant in the great unclenching of humanity. And the world is waiting for your exhale.